This Luka Doncic trade was crazy, especially in a time where it seems like we're waiting months for any trade to actually go through. This one truly came out of nowhere and changed the landscape of the NBA. And the more I think about it, the NBA forced the Mavericks' hand in one way or another, either through passive rules that they've put together, like the Supermax and the second apron, or by a direct decree from the NBA office in preparation for the new TV deal they have coming up next season. Let's put the conspiracy on the back burner for a minute and just take everything that's been reported at face value. Luka's conditioning is bad, there's friction within the team about how seriously he takes his job, then yeah, it starts to make sense why the Mavericks might want to move on. Because after this year, Luka is up for a 5-year, $345 million Supermax contract, which would guarantee him $69 million a season starting in 2027. After the trade, he's now not eligible for that contract, which doesn't really make sense to me, but apparently he's up for making $700 million in 8 years, so maybe it's all going to work out for him. But for the Mavericks, the Supermax is worth 35% of the team's overall salary cap. And right now, Kyrie is making 28% of the cap. And maybe by the time the Supermax kicks in, they will move on from Kyrie. Most likely they would have. But someone would take up that second star role that is absolutely needed in the modern NBA. So then you're paying two players over 60% of the cap. And if you're questioning the commitment of the best player in that duo, then you're kind of making a deal with the devil, right? And that's the problem with the Supermax. The weapon that the NBA gave to small market teams to fight against their stars leaving for the bigger cities has put those small markets at an even bigger disadvantage in the long run. Because if a player qualifies for the Supermax, the team is almost obligated to pay it, and they've lost all leverage in negotiations that they would have had if they didn't have to pay this player 5, 10, 15% more than any other team could pay him. And since it was brought in, only 11 players have signed the specific designated veteran extension, otherwise known as Supermax, and 3 of them have become finals MVPs, so it's worked out in some situations. But 5 of them didn't make the finals and got traded, and the other 3 are Joel Embiid, Devin Booker, and Jason Tatum, who signed it after the Celtics won last season. Now remember, the difference in almost all those extensions, aside from Jason Tatum's and the extension that Luka would sign, is the second apron, which went into effect this season. It essentially functions as a hard salary cap, which the NBA hasn't had to worry about for a long time. Teams in the past could just pay a luxury tax and get on with it. Build their team however they want to. If they make enough money, just pay the tax. Who gives a shit? But now, with the second apron, they're actually restricted from building their team and making moves to improve their team in a huge way. So the Supermax is not just this tax that you have to pay for this great player. It's not just a 35% contract, but it's also a barring in being able to improve your team with that player on your team. So not only is it hurting the small teams with this second apron and Supermax combo we have now, but it's hurting the league by keeping rising stars in a place where they're not going to be able to be in championship contention and therefore not going to be in the limelight of the NBA Finals. All this at a time when the league really can't take any more hits to its viewership. Don't forget that before this Luka trade, almost all the NBA talk was about how ratings are down this season. And that's actually been a trend for the last couple of seasons. But for example, this season, the NBA Cup semifinals viewership was down about 19% from where it was at last season. There are a lot of reasons that people have floated about why this is the issue. But for me, I think there's 3 major problems that the NBA needs to address, right? The first one is they have an inability to find a new storyline that will replace the Warriors, Cavs, Steph, LeBron rivalry era, which was the golden era of the last decade for the NBA. The second thing that I think kind of plays into the first thing is how hard it is to find a place to watch an NBA game nowadays, especially if you don't have cable. And I don't know anybody who has cable. And the third thing, which I think is just bad business, is that even the absolute best players in the league are hopping from team to team year after year, so much so that it's hard to even keep track of who's playing where. An example of that is that 3 of the players that I talked about being traded after signing a Supermax contract in Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and Damian Lillard were all top 10 in jersey sales the season before they got traded. Now, the NBA is asking fans to pay $120 to $200 for a jersey, and then within months, that jersey is irrelevant. That's just bad business. James Harden actually did this with 3 different fan bases: the Rockets, the Nets, and the Sixers. And I know he's fallen off a bit since he went to the Clippers, but he wasn't even top 15 in jersey sales last season. And I think that probably part of that is that the fans don't know where the fuck is going to go next. To continue that point, 2014 was the last time that at least one player in the top 15 of jersey sales didn't change teams the following season. And with the Luka and Fox trades, that trend continues this year. And it's just such bad business. And much like Adam Silver's entire tenure as the commissioner of the NBA, the league is taking their fans for granted, and finally, they're starting to lose their customers as a result. I said this in my last video, which I'll put on the end screen, but the NBA hasn't averaged more than 12.5 million viewers in an NBA Finals since 2019. That's something that only happened twice between 1985 and 2019, and now we've had it for 3 straight seasons. Interestingly, the times that it did happen in that 1985 to 2019 time span were Spurs series, so I guess everyone was too busy eating churros to watch the game.
They be woofing them churros. None of those.
In fact, last year's finals averaged almost 4 million viewers less than the World Series did, which should be alarming for the NBA. And that was starring Luka as well as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, 2 Supermax players and a player that qualified for a Supermax as well. So the other theory that I have about the NBA forcing the Mavericks' hand in a more direct way is that Luka is almost certainly the next face of the league once they move past this LeBron, Steph, KD thing that they're holding on to for way too long. So they need to get him to one of the big market franchises stat. Otherwise, they're going to run into a Spurs problem all over again. They felt the need to dip into their player movement problem that was not without backlash if you saw the Mavs fan videos to solve their bigger problem, which is no one cares about what happens in NBA games right now. I was actually listening to Bill Simmons' podcast a few weeks ago when all the former NBA players were coming out and saying that the reason that no one is watching the games is because they're shooting too many threes, which it's just such an old man, we did it better answer. And, to be honest, they're not completely wrong, but it's not the biggest reason why people aren't watching the games. The Warriors started the three-point trend, and they had the most watched finals of the millennium, so I think threes aren't the problem here. But anyway, Bill and his guest, who I can't remember exactly who it was, Howard something, were just sitting there saying how basketball is the best ever right now, that the game is just so much more advanced, and any game on a Tuesday night on League Pass is just so much more entertaining than primetime games in the 90s. And talent-wise, he probably has some point there. But who the fuck is paying for League Pass? The NBA, which is supposed to be this sports league of the future, doesn't have a nationally broadcast game besides Christmas that's not on cable until like March when NBA Sunday comes around. And I'm almost 30, and no one my age or even like quite a bit older than me has cable. I don't know anyone that has cable. My 60-year-old parents don't have cable. So who cares if the talent is great and they're doing all these great things if no one can see the goddamn games? Even local games are hard to find if you don't have a specific cable package. And then if you want to go with League Pass, they lock out the local games anyway. I just looked it up. The cheapest package is $50 for a season of League Pass games. And even then, you still have to watch commercials. And if you want to go without commercials, it's $75. So you're saying I got to pay $50 and I can't even watch Blazer games? Or if you're in fucking New York, you can't even watch Knicks games for that $50? Like, what kind of deal is that? And it's just such a stupid business model the NBA has. And no one is willing to say it, that the fucking NBA has fucked themselves because they haven't moved with the times. They've overvalued what they have, and they're expecting fans to bend over backwards to watch the game instead of meeting the fans where they're already at. And this is all happening while the NFL is finding more and more ways each season to get you all the games at a cheap price. You can get Red Zone without any other cable for $15 a month, and you don't watch a commercial the whole goddamn time. And then we have to sit here and listen to people talk about shortening the games or extending the three-point line. It's like, the game is fine. Just give us a way to watch it that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. And if we do pay money, don't fuck us over for spending extra money and supporting your product. But change is on the way in the form of a new TV deal that the NBA signed this last summer. And I think it might be a great thing for the NBA and its fans. Because most of the talk about this TV deal when it first came out was the NBA moving away from TNT and losing inside the NBA, which is definitely a loss. But I think it's a worthwhile sacrifice. Because having the flagship programming for your league on a cable network is a death sentence in 2025. So if we're going to replace TNT with NBC and Amazon and maybe still get a little bit inside the NBA, it's an absolute win for the league. And just to kind of give you an idea, it looks like that NBC will have Monday night games exclusively on Peacock, and then they'll have Tuesday night games that air on NBC, and I would imagine they're probably going to put them on Peacock as well, since that's what they've been doing with NFL games, but we'll see how that works out. And then Amazon will have Friday night games the entire season, and then after the NFL season's over, they'll have Thursday night NBA games as well, and they'll get the NBA Cup games starting with the knockout round going all the way through the finals. And then ESPN will just keep its regular programming the Wednesday night and then some other nights as well. And it's just so much better to have these networks in the fray, because it seems crazy, but 180 million people have Amazon Prime in America, while only 68.7 million people have cable. Obviously, everyone that has Prime isn't going to be using Prime Video, but just purely switching TNT out for Amazon gives so many more people a chance to watch the NBA. And for example, Amazon's first foray into live sports programming, Thursday Night Football, reached 13.2 million average viewers this year, which was a high for Prime Thursday Night Football. But it was still short of the 16.2 million prior to Prime taking on sole broadcast rights. But for context, that was being shown on Fox, which is a broadcast network, not a cable network, NFL Network, which obviously is a cable network, and probably in some cases a premium cable network, and Prime all at the same time. And it was only 3 million more viewers. So obviously, Prime is really starting to figure out what to do with live sports broadcasting. And the NBA doesn't have to go through those first couple years of TNF on Prime. They'll be benefiting from all the lessons that Amazon's learned in that time. That's not even to mention NBC, which offers the dual benefit of being a broadcast network partner that anyone can access free of charge as long as they have a TV, as well as one of the cheapest streaming services available. According to the New York Times, NBC and Peacock will broadcast 100 regular season games per year starting next season. And even if the league didn't change anything else and just got this new TV network deal, they would be in for a big boost in ratings come next season. But all of this put together is why I think the NBA forced the Mavericks' hand in trading Luka specifically to the Lakers. I mean, if you just look at it from a basketball sense, why would the Mavericks trade a swingman that is ball handling, scoring, all that for a power forward given their current team construction with all the big men they have? Even with all the things that we've said about the Supermax and Luka not really being committed to the team, if any of that is true, it really starts to make sense what's going on here if you remember what former Commissioner David Stern said back in the day.
Have you stopped beating your wife yet?
Oh, shit, not that. In 2004, what he said was the ideal playoff matchup was the Lakers versus the Lakers. And really, it makes sense. The second biggest TV market in the country, with maybe the most iconic NBA franchise, almost certainly the most iconic NBA franchise. That's what brings in the viewers. And so if you're the NBA, why would you let the new face of the league toil away in Dallas when he could be a Laker and save your viewership rating? And while that might seem slimy, I mean, a lot of things in sports are slimy nowadays. In fact, I was sitting in my car and I realized I have to make a video about the changes to sports that sports gambling is bringing, but that's a little bit down the line. But even if it is slimy, the NBA has got to do what they got to do to get this thing back on track. And in a league that's seriously struggling for storyline and rivalry and anything to draw eyes in nationwide, they might have just turned their fortunes around in the last week. They moved one of the new faces of the league in Luka to the Lakers and gave another one, Wemby, a legitimate running mate with the De'Aaron Fox trade. And combine that with the Celtics locking up their core for the foreseeable future and the Knicks building a power in their own right, you can start to see a vision for the ratings resurgence in the second half of the 2020s. And mind you, they did this all during Super Bowl week and have kind of stolen the headlines. I did a video about the Chiefs that isn't getting any traction because everything in sports is about Luka and this trade to the Lakers. It is a earth-shattering trade. They might have just figured out the formula. So like I said last week, it's great to have new teams and new blood emerge to freshen up a league. But at some point, you need your best, most marketable players to take hold and guide the league to greatness. That's what Jordan did. That's what Kobe did. That's what LeBron did. And that's what Steph did. In my opinion, this trade is a bet by the league that Luka can be the next guy in that line to carry the league forward. And all he needed was to just be in the right situation to make that happen. My question is, can the league take advantage of this new TV deal and market stories and rivalries that can actually grab the country's attention? Can they move away from being the drama league that uses short-term glory to chase these headlines instead of building out a long-term strategy that will continue to have fans coming back, and treat them right by making sure that they get their money's worth every time they spend money on an NBA product or an NBA game? At the end of the day, only time will tell. Thanks for watching that video. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you've made it this long, leave a comment, let me know what you think. If you'd like to watch more videos, like I mentioned, I have my video from last week here, which is about the Chiefs dynasty and why dynasties are good for leagues. Up here, I've got my most popular video about the SEC and realignment in conferences. Other than that, I got my subscribe link on this side, and we'll catch you next time. See ya!